How's it going, everyone? Hope you're all doing well today. It's Carpo here. It's a Sunday evening here. Guess you could call it evening. Gets dark so early in the wintertime, but I've had some thoughts on my mind today I wanted to share, and I kind of got sidetracked as to how to connect both of these ideas, but they ended up being right along the same road. The infantization of culture. It was a term I heard when I was reading. I was reading some story, some article, and it talked about how we have basically become children in our society in the way that we're behaving and acting towards one another. And it went on to talk about, what we all basically know. This is by design. In other words, many of the situations that we encounter in our day-to-day life, we are influenced by our experiences, and our experiences also include what we saw on the news, what we heard from our favorite, uh, podcaster or whoever was speaking about this on the YouTube or that on the news. We really based our ideas on what we hear about the world. In other words, we don't really get our information from one another as much as we, as friends and family, as much as we do, say, from people we consider to be the experts on this, which are supposedly the media. Of course, that's changing over time. But as for the infantization part, to give you an example, basically everyone's being talked down to. Whether it's the older generation talking down on millennials, being, oh, you guys and your avocado toast and you're just lazy, you just need to work harder, or whether it's the infantization of our elders, the exact opposite, where many older people who are put into hospice care and have to be taken care of in these senior centers are just treated like children and treated like shit. I mean, even when they have normal behaviors, we seem to belittle each other's, I guess, our moods and our needs as human beings. And I think that that's also by design. And I'll get to that, where I'm coming from on this. But the way we talk down on each other is one thing, but I think that it has to do with the fact that we're fearful. We fear the future, and we fear the past. We fear what we don't know. And one thing I've noticed, an ongoing aspect to this, is that we fear the future. But as humans, we're just not designed to look far enough ahead into the future to really see how bad it could be. Or maybe we just can't really grasp anything that far down the road, which is understandable. Before I forget, I just want to read this little quick article about this therapy culture. And I figured that he could define it better than I did. I don't recall where it was. It was just a screenshot. So I can't give a quote from where. It was on AMP, some google.com, blog site or something. But it says, then we've witnessed the rise of a therapy culture, which, as sociologist Frank Furedi warns, treats adults as vulnerable, weak, and fragile, while implying that their troubles are rooted in childhood, qualify them for a permanent suspension of moral sense. He argues that this absolves grown-ups from adult responsibilities and erodes their trust in their own experiences and insights. Researchers in Russia and Spain have even identified infantilist trends in language, and French sociologist Jacqueline Barus-Michael observes that we now communicate in flashes rather than via thoughtful discourse, poorer, binary, similar to computer language, and aiming to shock. Which I don't think many of us can deny that that's kind of where we're at right now. Others have noted similar trends in popular culture, in the shorter sentences in contemporary novels, in the lack of sophistication in political rhetoric, and in sensationalist cable news coverage, which cannot be overstated. And this last part, I believe our daily interactions with smartphones and social media are so pleasurable precisely because they normalize and gratify infantile dispositions. They endorse self-centeredness and inflated exhibitionism. They promote an orientation towards the present, rewarding impulsivity and celebrating constant and instant gratification. They flatter our needs for visibility and provide us with 24/7 personalized attention, while eroding our ability to empathize with others. And it goes on to talk about agreeing to terms we don't understand, and basically that we are just trapped into this paradigm. And this is an important part of how we got to where we are, and kind of where this little story is going. I think that we've lost that self-awareness, if we ever had it, as a society. The self-awareness that each individual has to do their own part, has to do their own thing, has to take personal responsibility for whatever their path is and whatever they feel is right, without using these whiny victimhoods like so many people do in order to hide from their responsibilities. And I'm not talking about hard work and making money when I talk about responsibility. I'm talking about doing your part as what you feel in your heart is your path and what's important. And being a good parent or a good father, a good husband or wife, respecting your friends and family as much as you can. And I think that a lot of the problems stem from an admiration of others. Okay, and I have to tread lightly on this because we all have heroes, and I honestly don't have a lot of heroes. I have people that I look up to, that the way they speak and the things they've said. I had ideas, but I can also see their humanity, the side of them that is flawed, because we're all flawed. And when you can see your own flaws, you can if you don't attach yourself to others as being this perfect, noble, knight in shining armor type attitude. And we can see that this is something a lot of people do. Look at the way that people have rallied around the president. Even knowing that he's a jerk, knowing he's a douchebag, that's somehow celebrated. The type of attitude like, fuck everybody else, and I don't have to listen to what anybody says, and I'm going to do everything my way, and I'm the only one that can fix problems. That's a very elitist attitude. It's an authoritarian attitude. But what we've learned is that a lot of people like that because a lot of folks don't feel they can make the best decisions for themselves. And I don't blame anyone for feeling that way. It is hard to know what the best decisions are. And this is why it's important to be true to yourself and your path, but also acknowledge tradition. And this is something that took me many years to really understand. When I was younger, I was just as stubborn as everyone else. Well, tradition has to go out the window, screw all these old cultures and all these old beliefs, they're pointless. I guess to give you an example would be kosher foods, in the Jewish faith, kosher is, what animals they're treated respectfully, right? This seems like something that would just be common sense for most people, right? The reason why it's a tradition is because people saw that they were eating animals and certain foods. They wanted to respect those foods. They wanted to be made a certain way to fit their culture. And so many different cultures have done this, just like with Islam not eating pork, which is a story all its own, and I'll get into that sometime. So anyhow, to get on to the main point of this video, because right now I'm just talking about kind of self-reflection and seeing that you have more awareness within yourself than anyone else can give you. Finding the humor in every situation is essential, no matter how bad something is. Trying to realize that bringing humor into it allows you to not play the victim or allow us to feel sorry for everyone else. Because it's easy to be empathetic, but it's easy to become too empathetic and start feeling bad for people, say, who don't want your pity, for example. And that's where, when I mentioned the PC culture, I always think of just the few extreme folks who want to go out and stand up for everyone else, and the person kind of looks at them like, I don't really need anyone to stand up for me, but thank you. It's a protectionism of one another, which is a direct response to the fact that so many people have been oppressed for so long. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing to protect others. I'm saying the reason why it's so intense right now for so many groups and people is because so many people have been fucked over for so long. All of us have been. Our parents, our grandparents, they've been playing this, this by design game, which has now reached horrible proportions. Now, back 100 years ago, Standard Oil, they took over the oil industry. They basically bought everybody out, forced out the competition. Now we have these huge oil conglomerates, right? Some of these companies, whether it be Goodyear with tires or, a variety of these other companies that built the Industrial Revolution, a lot of these innovations took time to really get out in the world. And then we hit this technical revolution, the technology, the internet. And I want to say this. If I were to give you this list of these companies, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Elon Musk and Tesla, Amazon, as well as the media and the politicians and the actors in Hollywood and the whole movie industry, what do they all have in common? They are all totally out of touch with people, with the average person. I mean, think about this. I mean, everybody knows Mark Zuckerberg sounds like a robot. It's not his fault. He was a Harvard kid. He was a Harvard geek who created a website in order to chat with his friends in college. I think it was originally to rate girls or something like that. The point is, he was just a kid who happened to find something that worked, and now people look to him as if he has the answers, right? Zuckerberg is totally out of his element when it comes to what the average person needs. I mean, because he's not the average person. He was in his own Harvard world, and then he became, a billionaire. I mean, you can't really associate with the average person. To give you, the same thing with Apple. I mean, Steve Jobs, maybe he was a little more normal, of course, but him and his turtlenecks and his kind of like fancy designs on the, it's not affordable for the average consumer, and that was never his intention. Microsoft, and I respect Bill Gates, but he was cutthroat at the beginning. I mean, he wanted to force out, I think, Netscape or buy it out. He did a lot of kind of, shady business practices because he wanted to be on top. And this is what all these companies do. So I can refer to Tesla and Elon Musk. The guy's absurd. I mean, I wanted to respect him. He seemed like a pretty normal dude when I first read about him. But his idea of, going to Mars, it's no different than the idea of what was it, the the idea of Mark Zuckerberg wanting to create his own currency, right? Which I believe it was Libra, which they want to, I think that was what it was. They want to bring their own coin in, and basically, that they're going to somehow save us from the currency problem. And the questions that were asked of him are like, well, why should you guys be in control of how the money operates, right? And what right do you guys have? What happens if somebody posts something that you don't like on Facebook and you get deleted and then you can't use your currency anymore? That kind of thing. The whole move fast and break stuff slogan, and the whole slogan of the whole Silicon Valley was basically, hey, we found something amazing and we built it up huge. And what happened today? And look at us, we're rich now, and we bought all these big houses in Mountain View, California, and Silicon Valley. The thing that people don't realize is that, and this is where I'm really getting to the whole fact that these people are totally protected, they have these utopian visions of how the future should be. And they tell people all about it, and people go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, let's fly to space and go to Mars and live on other planets. Or launching a bunch of satellites around like Jeff Bezos is doing. I haven't even got to the Amazon. Bezos is completely out of touch. And now they dominate over half of all internet sales are done through Amazon. And they are just becoming monsters. They bought Whole Foods. He's planning to launch 3,600 satellites into orbit so they can have control over this whole internet, and who knows how much they're going to charge people. I don't want to get too far off topic. My point of bringing all these companies up is one thing. They may throw some donations out here and there, and I should say, out of all of them, Bill Gates has actually done the most, in my opinion. He actually puts the time and goes out there and does things, but they're trying to create a utopia of their mind and their thinking. Sure, let's bore holes underneath LA. It wasn't so everybody could get around faster. It's so elite people who want to pay more could have their own private highway. A guy like Elon Musk doesn't want to wait in traffic, right? And, I'm not angry at them for being who they are, but I'm surprised that people rally around them when there's so much more potential. A multi-billion-dollar company could be making affordable electric cars that everyone could own. And let me tell you where this gets bad, because this is, when the average person says that they're struggling, they're told to work harder, as if working harder is going to somehow make you enough money to become one of these billionaires. When these companies first started, Apple and Microsoft, there were no patent rights protecting software yet because it hadn't been developed. So they were basically able to do anything they wanted without having to worry about stepping on someone else's toes. They didn't have to pay for access to features or existing software. This may have benefited them in the short run, but today, all of the innovators are being stifled as part of this by design system. And I'm not trying to say it's a giant conspiracy, but rather companies have realized that if you have enough money, then all you have to do is force out innovations by just abusing patent law over and over. And so new, smaller companies are trying to come in and help people with things they need, and these companies are just suing them out of existence. And to give you an idea of Tesla, there's one guy who repairs Teslas. He has a YouTube channel. And there was a little documentary thing made about him by Vice, I think. And he wants to be able to repair his own Tesla. And they won't sell him the parts to do it. And that's the short version of the story. They say that you can only get the car worked on by a repair shop, a Tesla repair shop, not any other repair shop. They won't share the tools, they won't share the information or sell you the parts. Well, they claim it's for safety reasons. Well, let me tell you, the same thing's going on with Apple and with various cell phones companies. Apple, you void the warranty if you open your own phone. If you go to somebody else to replace the battery, why do you think they glue those batteries in there? Everything is built to fall apart. And none of these companies are doing their part to really improve the world. I mean, if it's all about business and innovation, so be it. But I don't see why a person is worth billions of dollars. There's no amount of work that is worth that kind of money. And folks don't seem to understand that that money comes from somewhere. Money is, of course, printed. I won't get into the fiat money system. But the point is, if somebody's making billions, it's coming out of someone else's pocket. And maybe they found a better way to do things. And I say that's fine. Let business be and do their own thing. But when you're stifling innovation, when Amazon is forcing smaller people out, when they're shutting down local competitors in their own towns, just like Walmart has done for so long, what do we do about that? I think one of the worst aspects of this is drug companies. And a lot of folks would support, oh, well, patent rights on a drug, it costs a lot for R&D. Research and development takes a long time. Patent protection has been abused by these companies for so long, especially drug companies. In fact, insulin has increased up to 5 times, as well as several other, life-saving drugs that have been around for a long time, going up 5 times over a period of as many years. It can cost $100 for a single EpiPen, or a single dose of something that costs $10. Where they pay 10% over in Europe of what we pay here, and we just continue along paying. And this is why so many people are resistant to, say, a universal healthcare system where everything's paid for. It's not because people shouldn't be taken care of. It's because instantly that takes the spending out of the people's hands and allows you to just abuse the companies. The drug companies can just whittle away at our tax dollars, and we're all trapped in here. So, did we choose this? No. And I realized I've covered a lot of bullshit in this video that seems like I went from talking about finding yourself, being yourself, or being talked down to, all the way to those who talk down to us. And that was kind of the major point here. Is that while the rest of us, the billions of us, are running around just trying to survive, we have things that we have to pay for that they would never understand. Many billionaires, millionaires, they're so out of touch because they have no idea what it's like to actually wonder if you can afford to pay your taxes. To wonder how you're going to afford a medical bill. How many of you have just avoided going to the doctor for something just because you couldn't afford it? School. Having to pay for your schooling, of course. Even just a simple car payment or buying a car can be a huge hardship for a lot of people. And then maybe they get a ticket and they can't pay the ticket, so the court system screws them over even more, because the entire prison system, prison industrial complex, everything's just being rented out. It's like America's for sale. We're privatizing everything and letting companies take over where the people should have the rights. So what's my point here? I'm not just sitting here saying destroy corporate America and the system is what it is, but don't allow people to control the narrative for you. If you have to make smaller, different purchases, so be it. I mean, I personally stopped buying Amazon Prime shit just because it was simple. I was like, it's too easy to just order something, and then I get this giant box with a little tiny piece in it, and I'm like, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the business, it's bad for the small guy. I don't want a consolidated future where everybody is just in this designed narrative. But we're there. If we ever thought that 1984 was ridiculous, I mean, it's like, to me, it's kind of an idiocracy combined with Orwell's 1984, and I know that's been played out, both of those, as comparing, but a meshing of those two, we've all chosen to become, idiots, I guess. Standing there staring at our phones all day. I mean, I'm guilty. I use YouTube, and here I am. So I'm not saying, hey, everybody else needs to get off the internet. That's not the point. But I did delete my Facebook a year ago, and I'm so glad for it. People ask you your Facebook or Twitter, and I'm just like, I just don't have the time to waste on that shit because it's mostly just, people making each other feel bad. It's that disconnect from what's really going on in the world. You lose the emphasis on the words and what people are actually saying. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I pretty much covered all the bases I wanted to cover. I guess my message would be not to turn on each other. To realize that it's easier when your head is pushed to look at somebody else. Look at the neighbor. Don't look at me. Don't look at the big problems going on. Don't look at the politicians or the corporations. But you see the way that wealth is being consolidated more and more, and the wage has stagnated since the 60s. But inflation is through the roof. And, here we are. Bless America, right? It's not a country thing. It's a world-related thing. There's bad leaders everywhere. There's companies that are out of touch everywhere. It just seems that money destroys people's morale and system of judgment. I thought at one time maybe I'm wrong, maybe, because I know there are some billionaires out there with a conscience. I think it's only the ones that really spend their lives doing things for others that have a normal sense of worth. Many of them are so thin-skinned. I mean, Elon Musk has gone off on people on Twitter. He even called one guy a pedo because he talked some shit about Elon wanting to send a submarine down to rescue those kids in that Thai cave a long time ago. They just say weird shit. I mean, hell, the president tweets out 30 tweets in like one day, and he'll say all kinds of just absurd shit. So that's just become kind of the norm for what people are willing to accept. And I think it's bullshit. I really do. I've treaded lightly around the whole presidential issue because it's not worth the argument. So I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to debate the fact that the guy is pretty much the lowest form of humanity. I mean, all that matters is dollar signs and looking good, and the rest of the world is suffering. Not because of him, just there's so much more we could do. And every year, as I gain more and more knowledge and information about the way the world operates, I become more and more distressed at the fact that so many people are so unaware and choose to be unaware, because it takes effort to be a conscious human, to have a conscience, to have empathy, to care about people. And when you do, people just like, whatever, you're just too soft, go out and make those bucks. Well, I say bullshit.